Well, so hello and welcome everyone. So this is the series called Courageous Conversations Over Coffee, and it's sponsored by the South Coast Interfaith Council. And we're doing this because during a time of challenge and hope, we want to connect with you and in meaningful ways and bring you meaningful conversations with people who are wholeheartedly engaging in the struggle with creativity and courage. My name is Marietta Fong, and I'm a member of the board of the council, and I belong to the Rolling Hills United Methodist Church here in the South Bay of Los Angeles. We've talked with some really incredible people throughout the series. We've heard their stories, and we've been inspired and comforted and very much informed. So today we're welcoming Stephanie Rivera from the Long Beach Post. And we'll hear a little bit more about Stephanie in a few minutes. But first, we'll have a couple of tips from Cheryl, the council's office administrator, about conducting a successful conversation in Zoom today. Cheryl?
Sure. So today we're Zooming, and I'm sure you've done a lot of Zooming over the course of this pandemic. Some things make it a little more successful than others. So if you could all keep yourself muted until or while the interview is going on. If you want to ask a question, you can put it in the chat to Marietta, and she will be fielding all of the questions. And if you know more than one question in a specific topic comes in, she'll try and summarize the gist of the several inputs. And you also can raise your hand by using the in the participants area. There's a little raise your hand icon. Keep in mind that today's session is being recorded, and if you have your video on, the best option for recording is to have a light on in front of you, but no lights on from behind you. And we also Zoom is an adventure. It seems like even though we've been doing this for months, every session is different. So we ask for your patience with us. So
thanks, Cheryl. So the program will be about 45 minutes or so. We'll have some general questions and conversation at the beginning, and then we'll have a Q&A section near the end where Cheryl mentioned you'll have an opportunity to send questions to the chat or raise your hand so that I can share the questions in the chat or call on you to speak, and we'll just get started. If you are looking at the screen and you see everyone in a panel, that's the gallery view. If you want to highlight just the speaker, you can, up in the upper right hand corner of your screen, you may see a speaker view that you might want to use. So let's just get started with a little introduction to Stephanie, who she is and some of her background. Stephanie Rivera was born in the Los Angeles area and grew up in the working class immigrant suburb of Southgate. So as one of 6 siblings, Stephanie was taught to show compassion for others and to strive for public service and to fight for justice. She studied journalism, political science, and history at Cal State Long Beach, where she wrote for the student newspaper, the Daily 49er. After graduation, Stephanie worked for Patch Latino, covering the Linwood and Southgate communities and City News Service before coming to the Long Beach Post in 2015. And her beats over the years have included breaking news and diversity and immigration, which have helped her step into her current role as the community engagement editor for the Post, serving as the executive liaison to the newly formed Community Editorial Board. So Stephanie, would you start by giving us kind of an overview of your role and your mission at the Long Beach Post?
Yeah, I think simply put, my role is to be a bridge between the community and the newsroom that serves in both directions for the newsroom to understand what's happening in the community, what are the issues that are affecting and impacting residents. And at the same time, it's also to make sure that the community knows what the newsroom is about, how it functions, how we choose stories, how we work, what is our journalistic standards, which is very important right now, I feel. And I know we're going to get into this later on, but it's just, I feel like, and it's a new role that we're doing too. So it's a lot of learning as we go. But it's something that we see that because of the polarization in the community, you know, with each other and with news organizations, that there's definitely a need to step back and just get to understand and know each other. So I think simply put, that's kind of what my role is, and through multiple different ways, right? Through projects, you know, engagement, activities, stories, you know, social media projects as well. We do a lot of that. And as far as my personal mission, I feel it's two parts to that. One of it is making sure that the newsroom reflects the community it serves, with, you know, opinions, you know, just cultural and life experiences, things like that, that, you know, as a whole really helps us understand the struggles of the community and what the community needs. So that part is very important to me. And then the second part would be to make sure that we give back to the journalism industry and create a, you know, a network for the journalism students that we have here. I think that's a very important part that, unfortunately, as newsrooms get smaller, you know, those internship opportunities, those mentorship opportunities kind of get lost in that way. So I'd love to be able in the future, be able to bring some kind of program and establish that kind of accessibility between the students and the industry itself. So I would say that, just simply put, you know, being a kind of conduit between the community and the newsroom.
Wow, thank you. Well, so you mentioned projects and you mentioned some special programs. So what are, for example, some of the partnerships and the special programs that you found, you know, most rewarding, especially recently?
There's three that I'm very excited about. The first one I would say is the one that kind of led me to the role I have now with the community engagement editor. We came back last fall from a trip to New Orleans for the Online News Association conference, and we're fortunate that our publisher, you know, flew us all out there to just engage and be on panels and just learn, you know, as much as we can of, you know, new techniques and what's the latest in the industry. When we came back from that, you know, I found an opportunity to be able to write a grant on behalf of our newsroom to be able to get to, or to be able to get a up and coming journalist on our newsroom as part of Report for America, which is kind of like the Peace Corps, Teach for America, like that. I wrote the grant, and they liked the application. I let them know about the need for reporters to be dedicated to our West Long Beach and our North Long Beach communities, because since, you know, all of our legacy newsrooms have really been gutted and those types of coverage has just not been there. So we were able to bring in those two journalists from the community, and they came in this June. And, you know, while I'm excited the fact that we have the West and North Long Beach beats, what that also helped create was bring in two more Spanish speaking reporters. I was the only one. And it was very difficult for me to, you know, do my own stories and then have to help and translate some of my colleagues, you know, being an interpreter at the same time. So bringing in these two bilingual journalists allowed us to think outside the box and be more creative. And in that same month that they started, we were able to launch a Spanish newsletter, a weekly Spanish newsletter, translate more content into Spanish, and create more original reporting in Spanish as well. So that has been the most rewarding thing for me to see that. And that kind of just showed that my publisher and our editors just, you know, where I'd love to take the newsroom in that sense. So they saw that, and, you know, last month I was able to become the community engagement editor. Now with that role, another assignment and another project that I'm helping create too, it's one that was born out of the need that my publisher saw during this summer uprisings, during the Black Lives Matter protests, and just understanding that there has been that disconnect between newsrooms and its community. With that, we were able to create the community editorial board, and that consists of 7 members of the community who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, you know, walks of life, and, you know, opinions and ways of thinking. And they started in September, and I've been kind of the liaison between that and just helping them make sure their ideas and their voices, you know, translate into in their pieces that they write. So that you'll be able to see those come out usually Sundays, their pieces. And I'm really excited about that. They're just, so much between all 7 of them, the amount of information and the topics that they're passionate about. I'm really excited to see the types of pieces that they're coming up with. And then lastly, one other project that I was excited about, it's called Local Lives, and it's a virtual storytelling event. And that actually, we got connected to that because of our connection as a Report for America newsroom. They put on a call to all these local newsrooms to see who would be willing to be part of an experiment that tries to, connect the community with the newsroom, which falls in line exactly with what my mission is as well. So we did that in November, and we had 2 community storytellers and 2 journalists to tell the, kind of share us and take us on a path of what it's like reporting for, the stories that they have. So we did that last month, and that was really excited to see the potential, something similar to how we're doing now with, engaging the audience and letting us hear directly from the people. So it was really passionate storytelling that I was really excited about, that I felt, kind of took folks behind the curtains in a way, and just understanding that a lot of times our reporting affects us and impacts us too, especially when they can be very heavy topics, and sometimes carrying the weight of these stories can be hard. And it was almost a cathartic way of releasing that, and just understanding that more. So I'd say those 3 have been the most fun and just exciting ways of trying to engage our communities that I've been up to.
Did you get a lot of really interesting reactions from the community, especially with that Local Lives project?
Yeah, and I was excited too. We got to hear from a local Cambodian American leader who's helped in the Cambodian refugees in the community as well. And she shared her struggle that led her to create a holistic healing center that then helps other Cambodian refugees heal as well. And just hearing that story, we heard from another person who, was a childhood cancer survivor, and just we got to hear his first love story with his fellow cancer patient that he met within our with my colleagues. What I did hear, which really made me happy, is, as I was reading the comments, is that folks saying, wow, I didn't understand how committed you are to your community. And one person, even said, you've made me a new subscriber, which is like, the best things you want to hear, right? So yeah, it was a lot of encouraging stuff, just, folks understanding a little bit more, which is so important for newsrooms, that, we don't want them to feel that we're in a, ivory tower type of situation. So it was really nice to be able to see that.
Yeah. Well, you touched on earlier that local newspapers really play an important role in our communities, and you've given us a little bit of your philosophy about that. But tell us also maybe some of the challenges that you face today and how you're addressing those challenges, you personally in your role, and also the Post in general.
Yeah, so I think definitely this year we have seen how essential local news is because of the pandemic. The amount of varying health orders, and what does that mean for our schools, our students, employees, businesses, a lot of these blue collar jobs, and people just wanted to know. And we found ourselves being the place where people were asking questions that I thought that they were confusing us with the city, but they really needed to know, because the city's own press releases were being confusing. So for me, that's where I found out how important local news is to specific communities, and to know that some communities don't even have that really kind of made us understand how important our role is. So with that, we are essential, and we're trying our best to be able to communicate all of this, technicality, all this issues that is very hard for a common, for the layperson to understand. And we're, luckily we have those connections to city leaders. But knowing that this year, also at the same time, we found out how reliant we have been on advertising. And so when you have a pandemic that closes businesses who then can't afford to advertise with us, and that has always been, a very big part for a lot of newspapers, especially legacy newspapers, it really showed us that we have to rethink our subscribing or our business model, basically. So part of my role is also to be able to build some kind of, subscription base. And at the end, the end goal would be to be funded by the community, right? And that's where our connection is, to make sure the community understands how we play an important role in their lives, and ultimately for them to understand that they need us just as much as we need them, right? So I'd say those have been the biggest challenges, especially this year, because of the pandemic specifically, but it just heightened what was already an issue because of the internet, because of social media platforms like Facebook, that's kind of taken away those kind of advertising streams for a lot of newspapers too. So that has been, I see as the biggest challenge. One other one that I do feel is just as important, and I think can connect with that advertising model challenge, is that we've seen, and the uprisings this summer has shown us, that there is a disconnect between newsrooms and the communities they serve, especially when the newsrooms do not reflect the communities that they serve. I think at this moment, there is no Black journalist in any local newsroom. Certainly not in our newsroom. I was the only Spanish-speaking journalist until we came with the two new Report for America journalists. So I knew, just on my own how important that was. So understanding that's also what kind of drove us to create that community editorial board, which definitely reflects our community now. But I'd say the challenge that we and all other newsrooms are facing is making sure that we can adequately be a voice for the voiceless, right? And really understand those underserved communities that are out there. And that's a slower process. It's hard because how can we, now be able to hire more when we don't have the funding to do so as well? So, it's kind of like one, affects the other. So I think right now we're in that process of trying to figure that out. Where's the best way? And we're trying to figure it out. I'm open to suggestions, and I think it's just kind of learning as we go.
Thank you for letting us know about that. That's so important. You were talking about the mentorships and about helping people move up and into these roles that are really necessary, that you need, that we need, right? Yeah. I have to ask this question, and we'll see where it leads us. But a burning issue today is the polarization, and you alluded to this earlier. Do you observe that same phenomenon locally as what we observe nationally, and to a comparable degree? And do you think this is an inevitable trend? And what can you do as a journalist to respond if you do see this?
It's definitely a trend in local newspapers that follow what the national papers or television stations have done, in that, unfortunately, if clicks are the way to go, then they'll know that the controversial pieces are the ones going to get more clicks and get people riled up, and it's a very negative way of trying to get eyes to the sites or to the newspapers, and that's inevitable only if we're not sustaining our newspapers and we're not investing in them. Because there's two different ways of getting, engagement in the community. Yeah, there's a way of, getting everyone to fight with each other and just these easy stories that they can put up there. Maybe a newspaper is subscribed to an AP or a local wire service, and they're running all of these very controversial pieces because they don't have a staff that is able to go out there and cover these community stories. So that is one way of doing it, but I don't think that's necessarily the way that it can continue to go to. If newsrooms invest in their publications and get community reporters to also bring out the good stories. Everyone wants a feel-good story. We can all use them, right? I see those stories doing just as well and really show a connect with the community. I'd say what also contributes to that is, I feel like in some communities, when we have our city council races, it's supposed to be apolitical, right? But we see so many candidates aligning themselves with parties, and it's like, that's all that matters. It's like, where is it? It's supposed to be about the community, about the needs in the streets, and we don't see that. So I kind of even see our political leaders kind of encouraging that type of thing, where you want to pick sides when it's really, it's about good quality education, good streets, all of those types of city civic issues that we're seeing. But and that also leads to our residents telling us that they don't feel heard by the city, right? And we're supposed to represent the people and bring these issues up. So I think kind of making sure that we're listening to the community is going to be very critical to bridging those divides and those polarizations that we see. Because if not, I have no idea. It feels like fake news is really just overwhelming us and just making us the enemy of the people. And that's been very hard to do. So I'd say part of my role is trying to bridge those divides in that sense. And then just one other point, something I was listening to, I'm always listening to a lot of webinars and going on and learning so much. And one point that I heard earlier today was that with CNN and other cable news, just creating that 24-hour news, it built the need for a lot of coverage that sometimes we need our break. We need to be able to, soak in things. So for them to create that 24-hour news coverage and filling in, our slots with, oh, let's just have two people fighting with each other, and that's news. And, the public's not understanding the difference between that. So, and then unfortunately, some local papers, regional papers are mimicking that. So, I'm hoping that we can kind of push away from that. And just better educate the public from that as well. I think that's kind of plays into the news literacy. That's also affecting the polarization. Not understanding the difference between news, column, a blog, opinion, and just all of that. I think we really just need to educate each other, the community, and being able to understand what's news, what's not, what's opinion, and then from there just having really creative or constructive conversations.
And that makes me ask the question that's on my mind, and it's related to something that popped up in the chat from one of our participants as well, is what can we do as individuals? What is our responsibility, and how can we contribute to the positive momentum and not the negativity? She, in the chat question, it says, how can we as community members encourage good stories? So I think those two questions are related. And I'll also, after this, we'll open it up to people who want to put something in the chat or raise their hand as well.
I'd say, and this is something I let everyone know too, is, first of all, to be a good reader is, I always encourage folks to read that same issue in different newspapers, because there's always going to be a different angle. It's not necessarily mean it's a, right and wrong angle. It's just, I think that kind of shows you what the reporter found interesting of, say, a press conference, and they focused on this part, and then another reporter focused on this part. So I always encourage community members to read from all of their local newspapers to get a better understanding of an issue that way. And then from there, just when you're sharing stories, make sure they're from credible sources. And the way you can do that is there's a few telltale signs if it's a legit news site or not. Is there a timestamp? Is there a byline? Is there an about us? Those three things can really help you understand who's behind this. And we saw that with, the 2016 election and all of that, a lot of these people that were just, I think there was a story from, I don't know if it was a Washington Post or one of them, that there is a 20-something-year-old who was renting a home in Long Beach, California, that was just, creating, fake headlines just to get clicks to the site. And people were sharing that. And so we saw a lot of that thing. So I think right now we really need to put an emphasis on media literacy, not just from the community, but also sometimes the reporters themselves. I think that's something that we didn't think that, we needed to teach our journalism students, but it really does make such a difference to know where your sources are coming from in your story.
So when you mention this media literacy, let me ask you a question I have about that. Is it possible for you to do a bit of education in the paper as something that we could look at, we could read and learn and even share with other people about the importance of checking who's telling you this and where are they coming from and such?
Yes, I was the thing that this was kind of like a little project that we were thinking of, more of like putting it on social media and creating little maybe Instagram cards and just a whole little interactive thing. But you're right, maybe just something as simple as an article that kind of breaks it down would be just as helpful. So thank you for that suggestion. I'd love to do something like that. I know sometimes we get so creative, but then it becomes overwhelming and you want to make sure that you get straight to the point, right? So yeah, I think that's something we've been talking about, and I'd love to make that my New Year's resolution to focus on.
Okay. Well, here's an interesting question in the chat. Anne is asking, I wonder if the media could run the names of the deceased from the pandemic each night on the news, since the numbers that are being shown haven't always been effective.
I'm glad you asked that. That's another idea that we had. I'm following this Twitter account that posts names of every person that has died to kind of give a face to those names. And we'd love to do something like that locally. Not sure how that's going to look like, but we do want to do that. We were just discussing that, I think, a week ago. I think that'd be a beautiful kind of sentiment to do as well. And we hear every once in a while, we'll find them through the GoFundMe's that are going around on Facebook and all of that. But that is something that we were thinking about. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That shows us that the community would want something like that.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions from the chat at this point? Anybody, Milia or Cheryl? Otherwise, I'm just going to ask you to talk a little bit more about the program that you mentioned earlier, the local lives. And you mentioned how many people were actually a part of that? There were the
2 community storytellers and 2 journalists.
2 journalists.
Yeah, and so yeah, both of them, one of them was Cambodian refugee and the other person was a cancer survivor. And then from the journalist side was our breaking news editor. And he was able to share the story of his process for writing a 6-month-long investigation. I'm not sure if you all remember, I think it had to be from last year already, I'm not sure, but the scooter incident where the woman was fatally beaten with a scooter in North Long Beach. I'm not sure if anyone remembers that one, but it was a brutal attack that seemed random, but he took 6 months to find out that this all started in Louisiana. It started with a man who was young man in his 20s, had schizophrenia, became homeless in Long Beach, and just did not receive the mental help that he was supposed to get in Louisiana because of a broken mental health system over there. And then came up here and, it was everything but random, basically. And so he shared that whole process and what it's like to be able to uncover these things and how difficult it is really how difficult it is for a newsroom to be able to invest that much time to pull someone away from their regular work just to do these types of stories, which really just showed why it's so important to have a newsroom that invests in quality journalism. The other one that I was really excited about was our own Report for America journalist, and she talked about covering the Washington neighborhood where she grew up, and that's by Pacific Coast Highway and Magnolia and that whole area. And she lived in that area for a while until she was able to get a better job to move out of there because, it's not the best neighborhood. It's known for, historically for the violence around there. And just how she was covering the brutal beating of a street vendor and how she continued covering and making sure their demands for a, better, safe neighborhood were met. She was there at that first protest where, major television stations were there, Univision, Telemundo were there, but they all left after that day, right? It's like the news of the day and they're gone. But as a local reporter, you stay following that story. And she was able to help make sure their voices were heard. And that was the story of telling why it's important to have a local reporter to follow something beyond the headlines. And that's actually the one where after she told her story, we had the commenter saying that he's become a new subscriber to the Post because of that.
One of the participants has a question, and that's Summer. I wonder, Summer, if you could unmute yourself and ask us your question.
Hi, everyone. Yes, it has more to do with the reporting. I was curious what a typical day might be. How do you reach out to the community, number one? And then how does the community, I know, can write a letter letters to the editor, but do you have like a group meeting in the morning for the subjects you want to address and then assign reporters to the various things, just to hear a little more about the day-to-day reporting and how it's handled.
Yeah. So right now, how we have it set up is a group of reporters connect with one editor, and then another group with another editor, and then usually around 9:30 we have an editors meeting, and we kind of find out what are the stories of the day, who's doing what, who's open to for any breaking news. And the ones that have been dominating have been everything regarding the pandemic, right? The health orders, the businesses, just what does the community need to know in order to go on in their days. After that, the reporters go out and do their stories, or either making phone calls. I'd say for the beat reporters, the ones like our West and North Long Beach reporters, they'll go on their Facebook groups. And this is how I used to do it too when I was covering diversity and immigration. I follow all of the local groups on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, check in to see, that just as part of our routine to be scrolling through and finding out what's the story of the day, or what's important to these folks, what's a initiative that they're going through, what's a special project or an issue that they're focusing on. And also just going out and walking the streets and just kind of going down and seeing what's happening. Just yesterday, both the West Long Beach and North Long Beach reporters went out. I had them because I know we've been so stuck in being at home, and I'm like, okay, it's time for you guys to get some community stories. So I actually gave them assignment yesterday to say, go out and literally walk the streets of West Long Beach and North Long Beach. They came back that day with amazing community stories. One found out at the local farmers market here in just north of Bixby Knolls, some of the vendors were saying that they've been giving leftover food to folks who have been unemployed because of the pandemic. I'm like, okay, that's a beautiful little story right there. So he's working on that right now. Our West Long Beach reporter was walking down Santa Fe Avenue, and she finds out that this Filipino street food spot is opening up today. I think opened up at 11 for a soft opening. And that's a beautiful business story to know that, these are people that are trying to make it despite the pandemic and are hopeful and are providing jobs for people as well. So, we rely sometimes on online sources so much, but we forget that really a lot of our stories just require boots on the ground as well. So it's a mix of all of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. We've been getting several comments and questions about polarization and breaking through and getting to know people on the other side or someone that you're not familiar with. One of the comments from Manek was that one African-American pastor has a slogan, "How can you hate someone you do not know?" And for example, that pastor reached out to the head of an opposing a KKK group and was able to have a dialogue with someone there in that group, and it changed the relationship, if not the thinking of the people. And do you know of ways that we could even promote similar initiatives? I know we've got lots of groups here in the South Bay, for example, the South Coast Interfaith Council, whose mission is to promote understanding and communicating and getting to know people who are not in your circle of your universe on a normal basis. Can you think of other examples and encouragement for us in that realm?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where that virtual storytelling event also plays a part, in that we want to make sure we're featuring voices that are very completely different from what you are typically exposed to, and hopefully build a bridge in that way. But yeah, something where it's more dialogue based. I've been doing a bit of research, and there's one that I found really interesting, where a nonprofit newsroom got together with a barbershop owner, because we found out that in barbershops, it's almost like a mental health space for folks, where it's like it doesn't have that stigma, that maybe a cultural stigma surrounding mental health, but it's a place where, at a barbershops, you get your haircut and you're talking about your life and everything that's going on. So they kind of incorporated that and brought in people from the community and just kind of shared. And this was just after in the summer, in the height of the Black Lives Matter protest. So I'm definitely, and that's something that, as I'm stepping into my role and understanding more, that I'd love to bring in those kind of dialogues there. And just something like how you folks invited me, I'd love to be able to kind of continue that. So I don't have anything yet in the works, but I'm more of the kind of researching phase. And I'm open again to any ideas that you guys have.
Oh, good. Well, that ties right into a question I just got in the chat. Seema was asking, how can we as community members kind of be boots on the ground for you and be on the lookout for positive stories and ways to engage? How would we communicate with you about that, or how would we let you know?
Yeah, and I say we get a good amount of our really positive and fun story ideas as news tips from our social media channels, whether it's Instagram DMs, it could be emails to the editor or to specific reporters, depending on what the subject is about. We're looking at all of that. So feel free to reach out to us in whatever way is more comfortable with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, even our newsroom phone as well. We're always open to those. I get a lot of story ideas that way. I make sure that I'm open to the community and I'm responding. And I think one of them that we found, I'm trying to remember, one about a violinist. I remember, I think that was a story that he was promoting himself, and we're like, no, it wasn't the violinist. It was bedtime storytelling by Black men. And he was a local mental health family Mount counselor here in Bixby Knolls. I'm in Bixby Knolls area, and he messaged us, and I saw that, and I'm like, this is amazing that what you're doing. And this was again in the summer because of the protest, and he just wanted to, make sure students or children were able to be exposed to positive role models, and especially Black men. And a Black man himself, he said like that it changed his life when he had someone come in as a Black man for like a professional day where everyone's talking about what their jobs are, and it made such an impact for him to see someone who looked like him. So I did a story on that, and he reached out to me on Instagram for that story.
We'll really be on the lookout for some things now. Let's see, Dave has a question, so let me just ask Dave to unmute himself and give us your question.
Okay, I saw a Gallup survey this year that showed that 55% of the population disapproved the way the news media handled the coronavirus pandemic. Why is public confidence in the news media so low? Gallup has been tracking it before, and it's been a steady downtrend over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say, and that's something everyone's trying to figure out as well, that downtrend of the last 20 years. I think that one of the webinars I was listening to recently was kind of making that connection to cable news and how folks are not being able to distinguish, factual news with cable and commentary. But another part of that is just, I think it's kind of that myth that the news myth, or in some cases it's reality, where the newsroom just doesn't reflect the community, and it's kind of siloed in that sense. But I completely agree with you. Even in my own family, there's folks that don't believe in the vaccine, or that have so much mistrust in the media and the government to be able to really understand how important this is. So I'm very passionate about that, not just because I see it in the newsroom, but I see it in my own family. I have a diverse family in thought, both conservative, liberal, and some who think outside of the normal ways of what we're thinking about. And I see a pattern in that in the community Instagram posts and our Facebook comments and all of that. And so that worries me, but I also feel like this is why it's important to have roles like either mine, community engagement, audience engagement, where we're listening to what folks are having issues with, to make sure that our stories are addressing those needs, right? So something like the vaccines and the science behind them, sometimes we do need to break down exactly what that means so folks can have more trust. And I think it's easy for, outlets, newsrooms to say, dismiss the trolls. But no, these trolls are just, a part of a bigger issue that folks just feel like they're not heard. And I think it really comes down to that people feel like they're being dismissed. And I think we really have to find a way to balance that, where we acknowledge that there have been maybe some historical wrongs and reasons, really legitimate reasons for that mistrust in the government, and being able to acknowledge, where that comes from and how we can kind of build off of that in our stories as well.
Yeah, one effect that I have heard is that because of lower levels of trust in institutions, societal institutions like the government specifically, and the media occasionally too, is one of the reasons why the US, for example, has not perhaps responded as effectively to the pandemic situation as some of the other countries who have done really well. They did a survey that measured trust levels, and in countries where the trust level was high, they had a very low mortality rate and a much lower infection rate because they were able to work together as communities and take um, trust in their leaders and trust in the communication that was coming about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have been so kind and so gracious, Stephanie. Really, really feel as if we've gotten some very valuable things and some very, really valuable time together. I wonder if Melia, if you would like to kind of wrap it up for us and maybe share with us some things about the council and things that we can look forward to in the council.
Sure. Marietta, can I ask one quick question before I
Of
do that?
course.
So Stephanie, I yesterday I read this story and I can't tell you how much it hurt my heart, but it was, and I forget where it was, but a sixth grader who shot himself while he was on virtual school, a 11-year-old. Yeah, and he killed himself. Okay. And anyways, the story focused on the realm of mental health. And I know that was one of the topics we had covered in this courageous conversation way on the onset. And I think, obviously people are cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of mental health implications per this pandemic, but there's a part of me that feels like, what can the media also do to address these needs of these kids, because they're sort of in a completely different paradigm as well. And we have all this talk about, okay, wear your mask, this, that, intellectual conversations about cost benefit analysis of mask or no mask, vaccine or vaccine, and then you have a little 11-year-old who's just like, and they were home alone. They're isolated, right? They're isolated. They don't have their peers. They don't have this. And I just wondered, like, is there something that the greater media can do where I don't know, somehow maybe helps parents also bridge that gap? Because in many cases you have, the parents, they have to work, right? So it's a really challenging paradigm. So I don't know. I just wondered if there's something that the media can provide as a tool for even the parents to talk about the mental health effects on their children for this pandemic. It's more and more, affecting them in such a negative way.
I think it's for such a big community problem like that, it definitely requires everyone in the community offer those solutions. And you reminded me of something that I really love, this concept that's kind of building up within journalism. It's solutions-based reporting. And it's not just writing on an issue and saying, oh, look at this negativity that happened. It's like, okay, well, what's the positive that's coming out of that? And that's something I believe in myself, and I try to practice, and I'm, kind of share with the reporters as well. Just something like that, like turning a sad negative story on a child who died. It's like, well, what can we do to prevent that again? And maybe is it as something as simple as listing these resources available that maybe the parents don't know? Could be maybe us. I know we've been doing a lot these last couple of months, like live chats with health officials. Definitely, we've touched on mental health as well, and just us talking with these professionals to kind of get more insight. So I think there's a lot of different ways. But this is where the media is important in being able to bring the best solutions out there and make sure it's publicly available to everyone. So that's something I believe in. And I think it's going to be important to be able to connect everyone together for that.
Right. All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Stephanie. We really appreciate your time and all the efforts that you're putting in regards to just having an effective, really means of communication with the community, right? Where they felt hurt, where they feel heard, as well as that they have trust in what, who they're reading, what they're reading and things. So I really, really appreciate your time and your efforts. And please know that we as an entity, in terms of the Interfaith Council, if there's any way that we can be of service to you, just please know that we're here, particularly during this time when, you know, we really have to reach out to one another, right? I mean, we're kind of all stuck in this predicament, but thank you so much. In regards to the Interfaith Council, we, as all of you know, we continue this program. We will continue this program. It's the first Friday of every month. We're working on the one for in January. So as soon as we have that, we will let you know. But in the meantime, we do have 2 other programs before that are coming up. So Cheryl, if I could ask you to share those flyers, that would be great. So on January 17th, Sunday, from 3 to 5 p.m., honoring Dr. Martin Luther King. This is something that we've done years and years. This will be the 29th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Interfaith and Intercultural Celebration. And we're planning this year I guess next year for it to be on Zoom. So the date is January 17th. That's a Sunday. We're going to focus on furthering Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. Where do we go from here? And it's from 3 to 5 p.m. So please do join us. More information will follow. And we also have a Religion 101 series our Religion 101 series continues monthly, with the exception of a few months like November and December. But on January 28th, it's always the last Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. And of course, we're virtual now. So we will actually have Father Alexei from St. Andrew's Russian Greek Catholic Church, who will actually be talking about the Greek Catholic Church, the Russian Greek Catholic Church, and who are they and what they do, and just an informational session on that. So we invite you to please join us. You can always find all this information on our website, scinterfaith.org. We have a YouTube channel. We'd love for you to subscribe and be a part of our community as well.
Amelia, you may want to point out that the first Friday in January is January 1st, New Year's Day. So we won't be having
Yes.
Our next courageous conversation will not be on the first Friday, but
You're true. Very good. Yes, we'll probably have it on the 2nd. So we'll get that worked out or not the 2nd, but the 2nd Friday of the month. But thank you, Cheryl, for pointing that out. See, I always say I can't do this without Cheryl, right? And there you go. There's proof of that. But yes, definitely. Thank you, Cheryl. And I think, Cheryl, do we have one more where we're just, yes, of course, there are ways to give. As a nonprofit, akin to most nonprofits out there, you know, we operate on donations and individual donations. And so if you are able to, we would love for you to share your generosity. You can go on our website, scinterfaith.org/ donate. You can text help SCIC to 44321 or mail in a donation at 759 Linden Avenue. So if you're able to support us, we would love that. And we would love for you to be a part of our programs as we continue this pandemic era, right? See where we go and how far this goes. So thank you.
Thank you, Amelia, for your leadership and for the opportunities that we are provided to be involved and engaged with each other, and for the opportunities to talk to some wonderful people and to learn some really valuable and inspiring and encouraging things. And I think today's conversation has definitely been inspiring and encouraging. Stephanie, with people like you out there helping us engage with the community and engage with each other, that's what it's all about. That's what we really need today. So we appreciate everyone who's been here today to join in the conversation and listen to the dialogue. We encourage you to check out our website and see what else is next. Come to the next Courageous Conversations and all the other events that we have going on, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Marietta and Cheryl as well. And have a good afternoon.
Thanks.